Good morning, everybody. How are you guys doing today? Oh, good. Well, looks like all you guys set your clocks forward an hour this morning, so glad you made it here on time. You know, I lived in Arizona now for 3 years, and there are so many things I'm grateful about living here, but daylight savings time no longer is one of those things for sure. So looks like you all made it here on time, most of you anyway. And so we're glad to have you here. My name is Kenny Conley. I'm the next generation pastor here at Mission, and we have a great service planned for you today. We're so excited for you to be here. Listen, if this is your first time here, maybe you've been here just a few times, we would love to connect with you. If you have any questions about us as a church, what we do, how we do it, how you can get connected, how you can serve, we've got a place designed specifically for you it's called the Hub. It's right out these doors in the lobby, and we can answer your questions. We'd love to connect with you. So be sure before you leave today that you go and meet us. We'd love to connect with you about those things. Now, every third Sunday here at Mission, we partner with one of our local organizations. There's about 9 that we partner with all year long and collect things for them. And next week it is Helen's Hope Chest. Helen's Hope Chest is an organization. Yeah, all right. Helen's Hope Chest is an organization that provides resources, toys, clothes, things like that for foster kids here in Arizona. There's over 18,000 kids in the foster system just in Arizona alone, and Helen's Hope Chest does so much to provide for them, to give them a sense of confidence and love in a way that many of these kids get overlooked, and so it's a great way to do that. They have a very specific list of things that they're looking for to help with. I'm going to read just a couple of these. They need toothpaste, children's shampoo, teen books, gently used boys and men's shoes of any size, newer gently used boys jeans, sizes 4 to 7. We have a card out in the Hub. So if you would love to help out and support one of our amazing partners, just go by the Hub and grab this card and bring one of these things, bring all these things, and bring them next week. We'll have a tent out in the courtyard. You can drop those things off there. And speaking of LoveWorks, we actually be praying for a team. We actually just sent a team of teenagers, of Anthem teenagers, to Malawi on Thursday night. They arrived on Saturday morning our time. Just be praying for them this week as they work with them. And if you happen to have kids, 4th grade through 12th grade, today's the last day to apply for LoveWorks summer mission team. So we'd love to have you. We got some amazing trips this summer, 2 for preteens, 1 for junior high. We've got 2 for high school. And so today's the last day to apply. You can go to missionaz.org/LoveWorks to apply for one of those trips. So we're going to have a great day today. If you would, stand up, meet somebody next to you, give them a high five, fist bump, tell them how excited you are to see them here this morning.
cross is my beginning, the line drawn in the sand, the end of all my striving. Now I am born again. There Jesus was forsaken, so I will never be. His grace is my salvation, the gift of God, the work of Calvary. It is done, it is finished. Christ has won, He is risen, grace is here, love has triumphed over death forever. The cross needs no addition, His mercy is complete. He is my everlasting. The Son of God has spoken over me. It is done, it is finished. Christ has won, He is risen, grace is here, love has triumphed over death forever. Come on, let's let our strongholds bow. Strongholds bowing to the Savior, resurrection power over every circumstance. His word stands final and forever. It will not be shaken. He alone has won it all. Strongholds bowing to the Savior, resurrection power over every circumstance. His word stands final and forever. It will not be shaken. He alone has won it all. It is done. It is finished. Christ has won. He is risen. Grace is here. Love has triumphed over death forever. It is finished. Mercy I'm forgiven. Sing His name. He is worthy of all praise. Jesus. He's worthy of all praise. It is finished. It is Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, finds till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You've been so good to me. So good, so good, so good. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. Thank you, God. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, finds till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. So reckless and let me There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Do you believe it? There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. You're coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, finds till I'm found, and leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. You pursue me, Lord. You're coming after me, God. Don't run from you. You run towards me, God. Amen. That is the kind of God we serve. That is the kind of God we sing to. The one who seeks us when we run from him. The one we cannot do anything to separate ourselves from. The one whose grace is enough. We respond to that grace today, knowing that Jesus changes everything for everyone. We welcome our team forward to receive our offering in response to a God who has given us so much.
Good morning. I thought I was about to watch Captain Marvel again there for a second. I was getting excited. Hey, I'm so glad that you're here. My name's Shane. I'm one of the pastors on staff. And thanks for spending an hour of your Sunday with us here. You've heard it already this morning, but you're in a church that is for everyone. No matter what you think about when you think about God, no matter what you were doing last night or what you wrestle with, you're welcome here. You belong here, actually. And if you're wondering if there is a God this morning, we did not have to adjust our clocks for daylight saving. So that should be more than enough proof, because I would not be here if that was the case. I'd still be asleep. This morning, I'm excited to continue in a series that our lead pastor, Joel, kicked off last weekend, all centered around the life of this incredible historic figure. He's both historically prominent in Christian cultures and in Jewish culture and just in world culture for the things that he accomplished, this man named David. And last week we kicked off this series by talking about something that has transcended time, an event that many people have told stories about both inside and outside of the Christian faith, and that is when David killed the giant Goliath. See, it's interesting because we tend to be somewhat intrigued by people like David. I mean, have you ever stopped to think for a second why someone who lived 3,000 years ago would still be being talked about today in Gilbert, Arizona in the year 2019? I think the reason we talk about people like David, especially him, is because David was a hero. David was a hero, and we love heroes. I mean, just stop and think about this for a second. David, this boy, killed a 10-foot, almost 10-foot giant with a slingshot. I mean, that's every little boy's dream. The only thing that could have made it better is if his crush was watching him. Like, that was the only thing that would have set it apart. But that's just who David was. He has a long list of accomplishments and prominent things that he did while he lived. I mean, he was a giant slayer. We established that last week. He was the second king of Israel, which being a king is pretty significant. He killed a lion and a bear. I work with teenagers. That's the only thing you need to put on the list for them. They're like, yes, sign me up. I want to be like that guy, right? Killed a lion and a bear, and he wound up being an ancestor of Jesus himself. David was an incredible hero. In fact, it's lists like these that make people heroic. It's lists of accomplishments and significant steps in life that cause us to look at other people and go, gosh, they're important. I would like to be like them. And nowadays, we're obsessed with heroes. I mean, culturally, we love heroes. We love superheroes. We love heroic stories. I mean, this is why grown men cried at the end of Infinity War. Like, we love, that's an Avengers movie. Never mind, it's not important. Anyways, we are obsessed. We love heroes. It's why, as a little boy growing up, I wanted to be just like this guy, Superman. Now, this isn't the Superman you grew up with, and neither did I. I couldn't find pictures of them, but I wanted to be able to fly. Like, I thought that would be amazing. Superhuman strength. Could I lift a car? I tried. You did too. Don't judge me. I mean, could I do that? The thought of having heat rays that flash out of my eyes, that sounds amazing. And I'm sure you had your superhero too. Like I said, I did see Captain Marvel, so I'm starting to wonder if maybe I want to be like her. But anyways, it was Superman when I was a kid. And then on a more realistic level, this guy was my hero. His name is Ken Griffey Jr. Wow, y'all like Ken Griffey Jr. Give it up for him. I'll let him know. I don't know him. Anyways, Ken Griffey Jr. I was a baseball player growing up, and this guy, I mean, he was the man. He had arguably the sweetest swing in the history of baseball, and he had incredible swagger. So as a kid, I'm like, I just want his shoes and I want his swagger. And if I could just have a fraction of the talent that he has, I knew that I would leave my mark on baseball. We all have those people. We all have those heroic figures in our life that growing up inspired us, because that's what heroes do. We tend to be inspired by heroes. There's something aspirational about these people in our lives. You all just thought about the people who were on posters in your room growing up, or the superheroes that you watched or read about in the comics. They stick out to us because they inspire us. That's why we tell stories of people like David. But the more that I think about this, there's a totally different class of hero that sticks out to us for a completely different reason. See, there's a type of hero that is actually, I would say, more significant to us when we stop and really think about what makes them up. These are the types of heroes that they just don't seem to necessarily have a ton of talent. They're more of the rags to riches stories. They're the most unexpected types of people, and it's because of those things that they tend to stand out the most to us. And these types of heroes are underdogs. I mean, we all love a good underdog story. And I think so much of it is because we can relate to them. I mean, think of some of the greatest underdog stories, one like this one. I mean, every dad in America wants to have this moment right here. Some of you have. Anybody ran the steps? And don't admit it. I'm just kidding. Rocky Balboa. I mean, what a story. What an incredible story. Rags to riches, wondering if he was down and out on his luck, to being a champion, spoiler alert. Or how about this one? Katniss Everdeen. For the millennials in the room, like me, she is a hero. She's just a girl from District 12 in the Hunger Games and has nothing to her name, but winds up changing the existence of all of those around her. Or how about this one? Rudy Rudiger. I mean, what a story. What a story. This guy, I highly doubt he ever would have imagined he would step onto the field with Notre Dame and into a significant place in their history and in football history and in movie history as well. See, there's something incredible about stories like this. Yes, we love superheroes. Yes, we want superpowers, but there's something different about these underdog stories. There's something different about these people that we can look at and go, yeah, I mean, before they really accomplished anything or before they were even on our radar, it seemed like many people wondered or even didn't know that they even existed. And I think the reason why underdogs tend to be so important to us is because we're connected to underdogs. Where we're inspired by heroes, the superheroes around us, we tend to connect to people like those in the pictures we just looked at. And the reason is, for every single one of those stories, they all started in a place of extreme insignificance. I mean, before they accomplished any of the things that they write movies about or any of the things that the stories would play out, before any of that happened, they were seemingly insignificant people. And we know what it's like to feel like that. See, we know what it's like to feel insignificant, which is why we connect with the stories of the underdogs in our society, in our culture, in movies of the day. I mean, come on. Isn't this true? I mean, in an age that is obsessed with heroes, you and I know deeply what it's like to feel insignificant, especially because we're constantly surrounded by the accomplishments of other people. If the reason we talk about heroes if the reason we spend time on a life of someone like David is because a long list of accomplishments, we know in today's day and age it's incredibly difficult to get away from the accomplishments of others. Because we're constantly looking at them, it tends to make us feel incredibly insignificant. I mean, this is what fuels our obsession with social media. Have you ever looked at somebody else's picturesque vacation with their family and you're just trying to figure out how to pay the bills? I mean, have you ever looked in on somebody else's marriage and thought they seem incredibly in love and it's been 30 years, but you're sitting there wondering if your spouse is even paying attention to what you're saying? I mean, have you ever looked at somebody else's career and job that they've received or promotion that they just got that seems to be shaping an entire industry and you're just feeling like you're collecting a paycheck? I mean, there are plenty of moments in life where if we stop for a second and we look around us, and then we begin to sit back and look within us and wrestle with the fact that our lives are full of unmet expectations and dreams that didn't necessarily go the way that we thought they would, or we're sitting in a place of life that we never expected to be, or a place in life that just feels like kind of a plateau or meaningless. If you've ever had a moment like that, you may not say it this way, we may not say it this way, but I think we're all wondering and wrestling with the same question, and it's this: am I significant? I mean, truthfully, am I significant to my boss? I mean, does she even care about the work that I do? Am I significant to my spouse? I mean, I used to think so, but what about now? Am I significant to my parents? Which seems funny in a room like this, but isn't it true that we begin to wrestle with this the older that we get? Am I significant to the people that are following me and looking into my life and social media? Am I portraying myself in the way that I want to so they at least think I'm as significant as I want to feel? Am I significant to God? I mean, does he even care what's going on in my life? It's interesting that we wrestle with this question and we talk about a guy like David, because I don't know that any of us in this room would for a second question whether or not David was significant. He was incredibly significant for the list of things, plus many more things that wouldn't even fit on this TV that he accomplished in his life. So to look at the life of David, to search for an answer to this question seems a bit counterintuitive, but here's the thing. David knew what it was like to wrestle with insignificance, much more than you and I would commonly think. David's life is actually much more connected to what we feel and what we wrestle with, maybe on a daily basis, when it comes to the idea of significance. So as we look at David's life this morning, I want to take a second and just back up and give you some historical context as to how we arrived at this person of David. See, David wound up being a king of the nation of Israel, but Israel had started in a long line of leaders that were all incredibly prominent and incredibly important. Israel's forefather was this man named Abraham, who God had made some promises to, one of them being that his name would be made great, and we all know his name, so God came through on that promise. And then after some time, Abraham's descendants wound up in captivity in Egypt. They were led out by Charlton Heston into the promised land a little bit later by this guy named Moses, another prominent figure in history, all of this leading to David. And Moses actually wasn't able to lead them into the promised land. Instead, the leadership went to this other guy named Joshua, who wound up being the leader of the Israelites, who would lead them into the promised land. But then after some time, the Israelites and their connection with God began to fray. They began living and not acknowledging God in the way that they should have or could have. And so God put some other leaders in place over them. Those leaders were the judges, Samuel being one of them. And Samuel is important because he's connected to David's story, which we'll see here in just a second. And then that wasn't even enough. See, the Israelite people, one of the most significant people groups in human history, they came to this point where even the judges that God had appointed were not enough for them. No. They were looking around at their neighboring, the neighboring communities, the neighboring cities, and watching how they were being led by kings. So they said, we need a king as well. And they went to the judge at the time, Samuel, and said, you need to give us a king. And Samuel's like, that's a bad idea. And God said, no, you don't understand. They're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. So let's give them what they're asking for. So God appoints this man named Saul to be king over his people, the Israelites. And it went okay at first, but then Saul kind of blew it. He became power hungry and paranoid, and that's never a good thing for a king. And it was in this time that young David was growing up. Under the reign of King Saul is when David would come on the scene. But it's interesting how the story begins. Because Saul had messed everything up, he really blew it, and God rejected him as king. But God not only rejected him as king, no. He looked at Samuel and said, hey, I remember how I told you to find the first king? I need you to do it again. But he didn't give Samuel much detail. So we're gonna look at the story of where David's life and significance begins. But we get to see it from the perspective of Samuel. The authors of 1 Samuel write out David's beginning like this. It says this, the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I'm sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king. I mean, stop for a second and just imagine this moment from Samuel's perspective. Samuel is the kingmaker. He was at one time leader over the Israelite people, a prominent voice, the one who was communicating from the people to God and from God to the people. He appoints Saul as king, this guy that he didn't even want to appoint as king, at God's instruction. Saul blows it, and then God says, hey, Sam, I need you to go find the next king, without giving him much instruction. God basically looks at Samuel and says, hey, like, get over it. Are you really still talking about Saul? No. Fill the horn with olive oil, put the cap on, get on your way to Bethlehem, which to those of us that grew up Pentecostal sounds great. Like, that's pretty familiar, right? Like, get the oil, let's get anointing. But for the rest of us, it seems odd at best. In fact, even to Samuel, he was a little bit unsure of how the situation would go on. Look at what it says next. But Samuel said, back to God, how can I go? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me. The Lord said, take a heifer with you, and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate. Okay. Saul is rejected as king. Samuel is sent by God on his way with zero to little instruction as to how this whole thing is gonna go down. Samuel is tasked with finding the next king of the Israelite people by the God of the universe who created all things. And God simply says to him, hey, grab some oil, head to Bethlehem, I'll take care of the rest once you get there. And I'm sure Samuel, in this moment, has to feel some tension around how this goes down. But if we were to continue to read, we would see how the story progresses. Samuel, he listens to God, which is a good idea. He listens to God. He gets into town. He heads to Bethlehem. He runs into and finds this guy named Jesse, whose chances are he had never met before. And then he begins walking out the instructions that God gave him. And he asks Jesse for his sons. And then his sons begin to line up. The first one comes out of the house. And ladies, I imagine this like the limo scene in The Bachelor where they're getting out and trying to make sense. So the first son gets out of the house. And as he's walking towards Samuel, Samuel sees him as like, this has got to be the guy. Like, he is tall, dark, handsome. Like, he is absolutely the one. He starts unscrewing the cap on the oil, and God's like, Sam, it's not him. Put the cap back on. Samuel's like, wait, what? What do you mean? And then it gets even crazier because it progresses, and Jesse marches all of his sons in front of the kingmaker Samuel. And every single time, God continues to go, nope, it's not him. No, not him. It's actually not that one. And at this point, I believe that Samuel has to be getting a little frustrated or even embarrassed. I feel like Samuel has to be wondering, well, wait, what in the world is going on here? You marched me out here, God. You made me do all of these incredibly strange things. I'm doing it. Why can't we just make this easy? And this is where the story gets really good. Look at what happens next. So he asked Jesse, are these all the sons you have? This is Jesse's response. Don't miss it. It's so important. He says, there's still the youngest. Jesse answered, he's tending the sheep. Wait. What? I mean, if you're Samuel in this moment, you're going, what? Who? You've marched all of your sons in front of me, but you're telling me there's one more. I mean, can we stop for a second and really be in this moment? One of the most significant figures in human history was left out of the lineup. Jesse gathers all of his sons. The kingmaker Samuel comes to town. He knows what he's up to. He realizes there's something significant about to take place, and he begins to march all of his sons in front of the kingmaker, wondering who will be next leading over Israel. And the run of the litter, the kid boy who's in the pasture tending the sheep as the youngest do, David, isn't even considered worthy to be in the lineup with his brothers. Come on. This kid was so insignificant that he wasn't even in the lineup that his own dad put together. Come on, imagine this. Imagine how David would have felt as he was out in the field knowing that Samuel, the kingmaker, had come to town and watching his brothers get marched in front of him while he was shearing the sheep. I mean, imagine the snickers and the looks that he would have gotten from his older brothers as he was approaching. The young, the runt, the untalented, the goofy little brother who's in the field with the sheep is called in to approach. Imagine how they would have looked at him. Imagine the feelings of insignificance that would have washed over David as he watched his own father pick out all the other brothers and not even acknowledge that he existed to Samuel. I mean, can you imagine how insignificant this young boy felt? Well, the reality is for some of us, you can. You can imagine, because this is actually exactly what causes you to feel insignificant. For some of you in this room, it was a dad who was there but maybe didn't seem to care, or a dad who wasn't there, that for some reason has caused you to feel insignificance for years and years and years. But for all of us in this room, if that's not the source of our insignificance, we know exactly what it's like to feel like David in this moment. We know what it's like to be passed by for other people. We know what it's like to be considered not even worthy to make it into the lineup. We know what it's like to be picked last, and those things hurt and those things scar and they stick with us no matter how hard we try to get rid of them. We all know what it's like to feel insignificant. And so did David, one of the most significant figures in human history, was passed on by his own dad because he wasn't fit in the eyes of everybody else to be king. But God saw things differently. Look at what happens next. Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features, which I'm like, did his mom write this? What in the world? Anyways, then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one. Can you imagine the brothers? Can you imagine this moment? Some of you have older brothers and you've just been waiting for a moment like this. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. The young boy who's not even in the lineup gets called into this moment. And he's anointed as the next king of Israel. I mean, this is just incredible. It's incredible what takes place. And on that day, the Spirit of the living God falls on David and begins to shape his life and leadership in incredibly powerful ways. The Spirit of the living God falls on David, and David's life begins to change history for the Israelites, but also for all of us for the past 3,000 years. It's the reason why we're talking about him in sermon series today, and the reason why we name our kids after him. This is the moment where it all began. In a moment for him where he would have been hit with and faced with the reality of all of his perceived insignificance. The moment where he was left out by his own dad from the lineup. The moment when he wasn't even considered worthy of passing in front of the kingmaker was the moment where everything began to change. And it's also the moment that I think forces us all to ask a question that is directly connected to what we see in the story of David. The way that this story goes down is so counterintuitive. It is so countercultural. Come on. We typically hang our significance on accomplishments, on accolades, on outward appearance. It's typically what we do, but this story seems to say something different. God's selection of the young boy David seems to say something different. So we have to ask a question. What determines our significance? I mean, is it our outward appearance? I mean, is it our collection of material things? Is it our house, the neighborhood that we live in? Is it our job and how quickly we can climb the corporate ladder, or a title or position that we hold? Or maybe there's a different question to ask. Who determines our significance? Is it our boss? Is it our dad or our mom? Is it our spouse? Is it our children? Who determines our significance? Because for most of us in 2019, we would rattle off a long list of people or things that we would be attached to, thinking that they're where we find our significance. But if we look at David's story, he did not have any of those things going for him, which means we cannot deny what God chose to do in that moment a few thousand years ago. We cannot deny the power of what happened at the beginning of David's story. See, God chose the boy in the pasture to one day rule in the palace. As counterintuitive as it may seem, as far off as it is from the way that we typically look at things and the way that we consider significance and the way that we would make our choices, God chose the boy that was out in the field with the sheep to one day be the king who would rule from the palace. This is just what God does. I don't know why. It seems far off and it seems strange. But if we were to read through our Bibles and read through the stories that all the authors lay out of these people who lived significant lives and were chosen by God for significant impact, what we would see is that God gives significant purpose to seemingly insignificant people. The Bible is full of those stories, full of them. I mean, all we have to do is read and we see it over and over and over again. Underdogs brought to a place of impact. Insignificant people given incredibly significant purpose. I mean, if you just fast forward the tape from this moment with David, about 1,000 years, something similar would happen. Another little baby boy would be born in David's town, the town of Bethlehem. And if we weren't careful, we would be tempted to think that this little boy's life would be incredibly insignificant as well, because this little boy was born in a humble town to incredibly humble parents, laid in a feeding trough upon his birth, grew up in a backwoods neighborhood. He didn't have much to his name. He was a carpenter by trade. It took him 30 years before his significant leadership would really step forward. And then as he began to gain a following, he was killed. I mean, all the makings of a pretty insignificant story, but that's the story of God in human form, Jesus Christ, that could look really insignificant on the surface. But obviously, Jesus is the most significant human being that has ever walked this earth. And I realize that's God with skin on, but come on, the Bible continues. In fact, most of the first Christians would have been looked at by most of the world as incredibly insignificant people. God chose a ragtag group of people to build his church. I mean, these were fishermen. These were tax collectors, which were despised in society of the day. These were women which were degraded in the society of the day, and God chose them for the significant purpose of building his church. It's just what God does. And I still think he wants to do it. So as we look at this and we talk about this, we have to ask why. I mean, why, God, do you choose people like that? What is it that makes the difference? If we typically look at the outward appearance to determine significance, if we're typically looking at a list of accomplishments or we're typically striving to accomplish great things or achieve great accolades in order to feel significant in the world that we live in 2019, what makes the difference for you? Well, I think the answer is actually found in David's story. I didn't read it up front, but we're going to go back to it because there's a phrase, there's a statement that God makes that I think shows us exactly what sets the people apart that God seems to choose. I think that there's this phrase, this statement that God makes that shows us exactly why he chooses certain people for significant things in life. Look at what it says in David's story. In verse 7, if we were to go back, we would see this. Just after the first brother walks out and Samuel's surprised because it's not him, God says this to Samuel: the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. See, God determines significance by a completely different standard than we do. As we strive to pile up material things, as we strive to climb the corporate ladders, as we try with everything we can to make our family look so picturesque and perfect, as we try so hard to earn the favor of our parents or now to vicariously try to put that together through our own kids, whatever it may be, that's not what God's looking at when it comes to significant purpose in life. I don't know, if we were to look at David's story, when we look at what we just read, it seems as though from his story that there's a couple of things that significance actually hinges on. There are a couple of things that God is looking for when he is looking for people to live out his significant purposes. And the first one is this: it's the posture of our heart. When even Samuel was looking at the brothers going, this has got to be the guy. The outward appearance, like this seems like this would be the next king. God's going, wait a second, Sam, that's not how this works. I'm looking at something different. And I think this is where significance starts. It's with the posture of our heart. This is what God cares about. Are we open to him? Are we willing to follow wherever he wants to lead us? Or are we so obsessed with striving to achieve our own pictures of significance that we've closed our hearts to what God wants to do in and through our lives? If we want to step towards significance, we have to start by posturing our heart to what God wants to do. And then it's interesting because there's another unique fact in David's story that I think significance also hinges on. It's the idea that, see, as David was made king over Israel, we all know how the story goes. After that moment that he was anointed by Samuel, he gathered his stuff and he headed to the palace and was given a crown. No, that's not at all how the story went. See, David, the new king of Israel, he did not head to the palace, he went back to the pasture. He went back to the pasture and he continued to work with the stinking, nasty, dumb, sorry if you're a shepherd, sheep. Sheep are just dumb animals, and he had to spend his time with these sheep. Can you imagine those moments for David? Can you imagine this boy who had been anointed king of Israel wandering in the field for potentially decades, wandering in the field? Hey, God, did you forget about me? Hey, do you remember that moment, like the oil over my head thing? Do you remember Samuel, that guy? Come on, like what's going on? I mean, it would be decades until he took the throne. But that didn't seem to matter to David. See, he seemed to be able to find significance even as a shepherd. He seemed to find significance even when he was simply playing an instrument in the court of the current king, who he knew was corrupt and had messed up. David seemed to be able to find significance, not just as king, but as warrior on the battlefield as well. See, our significance, it hinges on the posture of our heart, but I think it also hinges on something else, and that's our willingness to be patient. Come on. Would we be patient? Waiting in the pastures of our lives. In our current job, in our parenting, in our marriage that seems like it's going off the rails. What if there's significance in store if we would just be willing to wait? If we would be willing to be patient and wait on God and understand that as we wait, he's working, that as we wait, he is shaping a story that is more significant than anything we could ever ask or imagine. We just need to be patient. See, David understood something. There's a reason why he knew that there was significant purpose in every season of his life, even in the pasture. And it's something that we have to cling on to today. He understood, and we have to understand that God is the source of significance. God is the source of significance. Not money, not our boss, not our parents, not our kids, not our accomplishments, not our house, not our cars, not any of that. God is the source of significance. He is the source of significance for everyone. That's who he is, and that's what he does. That's how he sees you and how he sees me. And if we would just begin to see our own selves and those around us as God sees, it would begin to change everything for us and for this community. I had a moment where I experienced what this is like, I think more tangibly than any other. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I visited the King Center there near downtown. And I was able to see and visit Martin Luther King Jr.'s childhood home. And this is just kind of the way that I think, and thankfully my wife indulges it. But I remember calling her and saying, hey, I'm here at Dr. King's house. I'm standing in the front yard. I'm looking at this house. And I'm envisioning Dr. King as a baby waddling around the front porch. His parents trying to catch him, his parents trying to keep him from falling off the steps, his parents just watching the young boy grow up. And I remember asking my wife, do you think they knew? I mean, do you think they knew that he would one day change the face of not just our country, but our world? Do you think they knew that he would stand for what was right and what was just and what was true, the value of all people? And the more that I think about it, as you walk around that area, you're experiencing all the places where Dr. King would have went as a kid. The church where his father pastored. And I began wondering, and I wonder now today, about all the people that shaped who he was. I mean, we all know what he did. He's incredibly significant for a long list of important accomplishments. But what about his Sunday school teachers? What about the boys that he played basketball with by the firehouse? What about his parents? What about his teachers growing up? What about the other adults that were in the church that didn't allow him to get away with everything just because he was a pastor's kid. We don't know many of their names. We don't know many of their stories. But do you know how significant each and every single one of them were in shaping who he would become? I mean, some of us have things in store in life that might be as significant as what MLK accomplished. But that doesn't make the moments and the shaping of his character that was shaped by all of those around him who will never know any less significant. They were all incredibly significant in changing the history of our world. And who knows what you're a part of now that God is using to write a much bigger story than anything you could ask or imagine. In those moments of insignificance you feel now in your job, in your workplace, where you volunteer with your family, who knows what God is up to? Because here's what we do know. God is consistently and constantly destroying oppression. He is bringing people freedom. He is healing society. He is changing everything for everyone. And if we would just stop for a moment and realize that no matter what our role is, we get to play a part, then I think we would clearly see exactly how significant our lives can be. But if this is going to happen, we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions that we can pull from David's story. First, what's the posture of your heart? Is your heart in a place where this can happen? Are our hearts in a place where we're going, God, it doesn't always make sense. I'm not really sure, but I'm open to you. I'll follow where you lead. It might not be what I saw for myself. It may not be exactly how I thought my dreams would pan out, but I'm gonna trust that you're gonna do something significant with my life. Whether I see it on this side of eternity or the other, I'm gonna trust in you. And we would start by just posturing our heart, going, God, use me however you choose to use me. And then we have to ask, are you willing to be patient? Will we wait in the midst of all of this? Will we be patient in our current situation, in our current circumstances, in our current jobs, in our current realities, in our current letdowns? Would we be patient enough to go, God, I may not see it now, I may not understand it now, but I know you are doing something significant in and through my life, not by my own doing, not by my own striving, not by giving up all of the things that I know are most important to my internal health in order to put on an outward expression of significance. No, I'm not viewing things that way anymore. Instead, I'm gonna patiently wait on what you say matters most. And I'm gonna trust that you're working something significant through my story. Imagine if we began to live this way. Come on. David's story changed an entire group of people. David's story is one that we're still talking about today, and maybe some of us will accomplish great things like that, but here's what's beautiful. We can all be a part of a much bigger story that God is writing. If we'll choose to see ourselves and we'll choose to see the lives of others and those around us the way that God does. You are significant. No matter what your dad said, which by the way, God is not a reflection of your earthly father. He's the perfection of your earthly father. So if you fell short here, if you felt like you were given a bad hand when it comes to this reality, maybe it was your dad or your mom, no matter what they said or did not say, God says you're significant. No matter what your boss says, no matter what your kids say, no matter what your bank account is telling you, no matter what society around us says, we are significant because that's how God sees us. And if we would begin to see ourselves that way, we could not imagine the potential of how God may choose to use us. Our outlook would be more positive. Our lives would be more impactful. We would begin to make decisions that are more purposeful and more helpful to ourselves and those around us than we ever have before. But it all hinges, I think, on an important question. And it's this: what is determining your significance? And if it's not God, what do we need to do about it? Is it to adjust the posture of our heart? Or maybe it's simply to be willing to be patient. Let's pray together. Lord, thank you. Thank you for your grace and for your love. God, thank you that you see more in us than we could ever see in ourselves. God, our view and our perspective of significance, when we feel like when we have achieved it, often sometimes, if it's apart from you, it's rooted in potential arrogance. And so, God, I confess of that in my own life right now. In moments where I've strived to find significance based on what I can do, based on what I think other people will think are significant, God, I confess of that now and I give it to you and I ask that for all of us, Lord, you would give us the true perspective of what it means to be significant. And that's the fact that we are chosen to be significant by you. God, you did it 3,000 years ago, the story and a life of this boy named David, but God, you're still doing it with us. So Lord, we posture our hearts this morning in a position that says we will go where you lead us. We are willing to do what you want us to do. We will step in the direction that you would guide us, and we'll wait patiently. Lord, in the moments where we don't feel significant, in the moments where we wonder if we're having any sort of impact, we will wait patiently, knowing that you are up to things that we cannot see or perceive, and you are using our lives for significant purposes in your story. God, we love you. We thank you that you see us as significant. We pray that you would ask us to see ourselves and others the way that you do. And it's in your name, Jesus, that we pray all this. Amen. Hey, thank you all so much for being here. Love y'all. We can't wait to see you back next week.
Treasure for the change.